Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for another breakfast chat. And today we're going to answer the very ridiculous title that I made, Are Single Joint Exercises Killing Your Gains? No, absolutely not, but they may be limiting your potential if you use too many. So, I want to make this clear up front before people jump in with their nonsense replies. I use single joint exercises. I program single joint exercises for a large number of my athletes. Most of my athletes do at least one single joint exercise. Okay? So let's get that out of the way before people say I'm against them. But what we need to understand is that everything that we use in training is another tool in our toolbox. And if we want to get the best results towards our goals possible, and usually most people following me are interested in really serious levels of strength, either just for the purpose of strength itself or for a sport they compete in. About half of my clients compete in some sport, and most of them do not compete in powerlifting. I have 3 powerlifters at the moment. 3. Technically 4 because one of them's about to do his first meet coming up. It got postponed, but it's getting pushed back. So I have 3 who have done powerlifting meets out of 25 clients. Okay, most of my people are interested in strength for other sports or just to be strong. So, when it comes to single joint movements, the best use of them is to bring up a weak point. And one of the things I point out oftentimes, and I'm not the only coach out there with the big following who says this, excessive use of single joint exercises is what causes most of the tendon problems that people have. Okay. Well, I mean, how many of you guys out there, how often do you see bodybuilders who have their elbows wrapped up or sleeves on their elbows when they train? Right? There's something very, very wrong. Whatever they have been doing for training, they have made some serious mistakes along the way, if they're doing that. Right? You guys don't see me doing it. I'm 44 years old. Do you see me using sleeves or wraps or things like that to protect joints other than wrist wraps? Which again, I don't have the biggest wrists in the world. When I press heavy, it's a great benefit. Okay. So think about that for a moment. They do too many single joint exercises, right? And if you do too many, that can interfere with your big movements. For example, guys are like, oh man, curls really hurt my forearms down here. Yeah, the bicep insertion. Or they're talking about chin-ups. So they do lots of chin-ups that start hurting. Well, chin-ups are the best bicep exercise. Arguably, if we go by the data we have, chin-ups are possibly the most effective bicep exercise you can come up with on a rep-for-rep basis. Okay, that doesn't mean we should ever do just one movement for a muscle. We want to make that clear. There is not a single study of which I am aware that shows that a curl of any type has ever equaled or exceeded the growth that a chin-up can do. In fact, I'm not aware of any that show curls beating lat pull-downs. They beat rows. That's it. That's the only studies you have on muscle growth. Curls can beat dumbbell rows for bicep development. Okay. You don't have studies showing that they beat lat pull-downs or chin-ups. Go look it up, guys. You think I'm messing with you? Go start digging. I'm talking about actual muscle growth. We go to EMGs, weighted chin-ups win. Neutral grip weighted pull-ups are right behind them. What's the only reason then that someone would do curls? In this context, I'm not saying we shouldn't do curls. I'm saying, what is the reason behind it then? Arguably, if your lats have limited the total amount of work you can do and you need more bicep for some reason, say maybe you care about your physique a lot. For sports purposes, you probably don't, unless you're going to do straight curl. You would do curls because your back is then limiting your bicep development. In other words, your lats and lower traps and everything are fatiguing faster than your biceps, and therefore you still have a lot of bicep recovery left after doing your weighted chins, your weighted pull-ups, whatever. Okay. you could do some curls in order to stimulate a little bit of additional muscle growth, maybe hit a slightly different angle, which again, we know hitting a second angle on a movement has great merit for hypertrophy. All right, it makes sense in that context. But you wouldn't use it as a primary builder. You see where we're going with this? It's inefficient use of your time. All right, if you start using a lot of single joint exercises, your gym time starts adding up really fast. And you start having to do shorter and shorter breaks. And what do we know? That shorter breaks, oftentimes you're associated with less muscle growth, just trying to get them worked in. And that's fine. If you're just going to do one single joint movement, one or two at the end of a workout, just supersetting them or taking short breaks, it makes sense because they're not that important. Okay? They're not adding a lot. But when we start doing a bunch of them, what happens? It makes bad use of our training economy. Okay? It makes bad use of our training economy. It makes sense that if you have a specific weak link that needs the extra work to throw in a single joint movement at the end. It might be for your triceps, it might be for your hamstrings, it might be for your side delt. Okay, it does make sense in that context. If side delts are lagging and you're already picking effective builders, let's say you're doing snatch grip high pulls or something like that already, phenomenal shoulder builder. But again, you're just trying to get a little more stimulus to that one lagging muscle without adding a lot of fatigue to your body, because again, we have limited recovery resources. You could do a few sets of laterals. And it makes sense to do so in that context if that muscle is really important in the grand scheme of things with what you're doing. But in fact, the lateral actually, even though it's single joint, it hits multiple muscles anyways. Not that inefficient of a movement, to be fair. It does more than one thing, right? At the end of your benching session, your triceps may not have been hit hard enough. They're a weak link for you. Yeah, doing some extensions, band press down, JM presses makes sense in that context. Same thing with hamstrings, right? Because a glute ham raise, by the way, which I use as a single joint exercise, right? That's technically, unless you're doing the full back extension with it, which I don't do, not necessary. I have plenty of far more effective movements for that. It's a single joint exercise. If you don't have a GHR, a hamstring curl will get you almost as good of results. And I have no problem throwing a hamstring curl to a lifter who doesn't have a GHR. Why? Because maybe your good mornings and other pulls are not completely working your hamstrings. You need a little more development. Maybe, again, you need all three heads developed because hip hinges only fully work two of the heads of the hamstring. You do benefit from some knee flexion, right? It's a benefit there, particularly if it's a weak link, which in hamstrings are a very, very common weak link. That's we're going to step away from all the upper body stuff. We can talk about lower body. Hamstrings are a common weak link. A lot of athletes. In fact, causes injuries. Right? It makes sense to, especially depending upon what's going on with your workload and recovery, it may make sense to do 3 sets of direct hamstring exercises, of single joint movements, right? But we're not going to build our entire hamstring off of that. We're going to use things like good mornings, deficit deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, so on and so forth, as the primary builders for the hamstring. Again, one movement, particularly after your big effective multi-joint exercises. And you'll never see me saying compound or isolation, by the way. Those are not real things. That's silly bodybuilder terms. Single joint, multi-joint. But it makes sense in that context. You shouldn't be coming in and doing 5 different single joint exercises in one training session. That's getting ridiculous. It makes bad use of your training economy, causes your tendons to get inflamed. It can cause your training itself to become a problem. And if it's interfering with your ability to get quality work in and you're getting inflamed tendons, then it is killing your gains, right? It's hurting your progress at that point. But addressing 1 or 2 major weak points with a single joint exercise at the end of a training session, perfectly reasonable and actually a legitimate way to do things. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.